Hello, everybody. I'm just putting this episode to bed a little bit after midnight. So it's technically Saturday morning, so I'm in big trouble. But the episode is here. We are still, if you can believe it, on the first day of high school. This is true. This is the class of 74, and I hope you have a blast. Hang on. Episode 3, A Shocking Incident. As soon as the school secretary, Mrs. Marsh, announced the police were down in the student parking lot, Principal Dr. Mullen took off. For someone who only minutes earlier had been moodily smoking a cigar, gazing off into outer space, and who dressed so similarly to her own father, the New York commuter, the principal was shockingly fast, showing the heels of his black leather Oxfords as he took off running past the reception desk. Instinctively, Cynthia took off after him, ignoring Mrs. Marsh's pleas to come back. She followed him down the stairs and out the door to the right of the senior commons. She came out on a covered asphalt path to D Wing, but there was another path down to the end of C Wing. Dr. Mullen was flying down it, his arms pumping like a track star, his tie flapping over his shoulder. A cop car was down there, parked over the curb, lights flashing, but whatever was happening, it was happening on the other side of C Wing. Dr. Mullen disappeared around the corner. She ran past the doors, skidded around the corner, and stopped. Another police car with flashing lights was pulling in at the bottom of the lot. There was Evan, standing, but he was hunched over, hands on his knees. A cop was kneeling next to him. 3 boys were gathered around, one of whom had a bloody lip and a swelling eye. Cynthia thought she might recognize him. 20 feet away, another cop was talking to a very sweaty Neanderthal man and the 2 big boys who had stormed the cafeteria with him. Between the 2 groups, a man in a busy plaid sports coat was holding his arms out like a traffic cop, telling traffic to halt. Dr. Mullen went directly to this last figure, briefly spoke to him, and then walked over to Evan and leaned over. Evan slowly straightened up. He had a big red knot on his forehead and was holding a hand to his left lower back. He saw Cynthia and tried to smile, but then another cop joined the group and blocked her view. Dr. Mullen was now heading over for the Neanderthal group. Cynthia didn't want to get in the way, but she wanted to know what was the matter with Evan. She circled around to get a better view. A man dressed in a white lab coat was standing on the corner of the lot nearest A-Wing, talking to some lady. Cynthia edged her way around. The lady was shaking her head. 10 years I've taught here, and never have I seen anything like what I just witnessed. My student's friend was standing there, talking to Andrew, right in front of me, outside my classroom, and that big oaf jumped him from behind, lifted him, and smashed his head into the lockers. Then he threw him down and jumped on him like he was Mad Dog Vashine. "Do you follow wrestling, Miss Quincy?" the man in the lab coat inquired. "My brother does." Anyway, that's when Andrew, who's my student, pushed the big guy off him, and the cad rolled on the floor, got up, and ran away. What a coward. If he did this right in front of you, can't be the sharpest knife in the drawer. She gestured to Evan. How that young man can possibly be standing up and be in his right mind is beyond me. "Evan," Cynthia said. "His name is Evan." They turned to look at her. The man in the lab coat said, "Do you have reason to be out here, young lady?" "I'm not sure," Cynthia said diplomatically. "Those 3 boys," she pointed to Mr. Neanderthal and his minions, "caused a lot of trouble in the cafeteria a little while ago." "Well, the troublemakers out here are those 4, the man said, pointing to Evan's group. "One of them came out here with a baseball bat." He looked at the lady. "That's what brought me out of my classroom." "Evan wouldn't have done that," Cynthia said. "Which one is Evan?" the lady asked. "The one bending over." "That's the boy who was thrown in the lockers." "Couldn't have been thrown that hard," Mr. Labcoat said, "because when I got out here, he was on top of the big guy, threatening to break his arm if he didn't say uncle. Cynthia couldn't help it, and he didn't have a bat in his hand, did he? No, he did not. Blonde boy had it. She looked at the lady. I didn't know about what happened inside, Miss Quincy. Out here, it looked like 4 boys were ganging up on 3. Definitely not, Miss Quincy said. It started with one dirty fighter who nearly broke a young man's neck. You've got to tell the police, Cynthia said to her. I intend to, young lady. She looked back. Coming, Mr. Gerard? I don't think I can add anything, particularly since I got the situation wrong, it seems. Unless you need my help, he hastened to add. No, I don't. She turned and walked quickly towards Evan's group. How did the police get here, Cynthia asked. Somebody in the English office must have called, Mr. Labcoat said. They're the only ones who have a phone at this end of the school. Cynthia moved forward a little when Evan's group appeared to be breaking up. She started to make her way toward him, but another police officer reached him before she did, and she backed off. Evan was still pressing a hand on his back and was looking around. Now that she was closer, she did recognize the boy with the swollen eye and bleeding lip. That was Andrew, the student the lady was talking about before. He was the captain of the soccer team. He met Cynthia's eyes and walked over. Cynthia, right? Right, she said. How are you? How is your summer? She looked at him. You're all beat up, Andrew. Who cares how I am? What happened to you and Evan? Oh, I'll be fine. He'll be fine. And it was worth it to hear Wronski say uncle. She pointed at Neanderthal man. That guy's Wronski? Big mouth, big gut Vic Wronski, half-assed defensive lineman on the football team. Andrew asked her to excuse him and turned to spit. Cynthia winced when she saw blood in it. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and turned back around to face her. That piece of crap jumped Evan in the hall from behind. He smashed his head into a locker and jammed an elbow into his kidney on purpose. So that's why he had his hand on his back, his kidney. That lady there, Cynthia said, pointing to Miss Quincy, said it happened right in front of her. Yeah, that's Miss Quincy, our teacher. It happened outside her classroom. Miss Quincy was making a lot of gestures as she was talking to one of the cops. We're lucky she was there, Andrew said. Wronski's over there trying to convince the cops that Evan assaulted him. Who's that guy? Cynthia asked, pointing to the plaid jacket man. It's Coach Griffin, that teaches in the next class over. He saw Evan on top of Wronski and ran out to pull him off before he got expelled. He's hoping Evan will be our star midfielder this year. I can't believe after getting hit like that, Evan could possibly have gotten that guy on the ground. Andrew grinned. That part was sort of a group effort. Thank you so much for helping him, Andrew. It's okay. That's what teammates do. Yeah, she thought, like those 2 scumbag friends of Wronski's. She wondered what co-captain Teddy Hamilton was going to think about this event. She needed to make sure he heard the whole story. Dr. Mullen was heading their way. Cynthia said Miss Quincy saw exactly what Wronski did to Evan in the hall, Dr. Mullen. I am going to talk to Miss Quincy. Right now she's talking to one of the police officers. And you, Mr. Attilio, that officer also needs to take your statement. I don't want you to discuss this event with anyone until we have an accurate picture of what happened. So please talk to one of those officers and see the nurse after. Dr. Mullen looked at Cynthia with a sense of wonderment. What in the world are you doing out here, Miss Schuyler? I followed you from the office because I thought those boys might have hurt Evan. Before I was in your office, Dr. Mullen, I saw them chase Evan through the cafeteria. Why were they chasing him? She took a breath, hoping she didn't mess this up. It all started this morning before school when that guy Wronski called Evan faggot. Oh, she thought of what her mother told her. When he called Evan that name because he was playing soccer instead of football. Then why was Mr. Wronski chasing Mr. Whitaker? Because this morning, after he called Evan, Well, that word, Evan said Ronsky wished Evan was gay so Ronsky could try and ask him out. All the kids laughed at that, and Ronsky was furious. But then the school bell rang and everything broke up. Andrew just told me Ronsky jumped Evan in the hall from behind, smashed his head into a locker, and jammed an elbow into his kidney on purpose. And it happened right in front of Miss Quincy. The principal winced at the word kidney, so Cynthia knew she was doing a good job. I think I'm beginning to understand what happened, the principal said, rubbing his forehead. So thank you, Miss Schuyler. But that still doesn't explain why you're out here instead of in class. I was scared Evan was being hurt. If you will forgive a touch of sarcasm, big bad you was going to defend him? Not me. I had you, Dr. Mullen. I was right behind you, and you looked very able when you were running down that hill from the school. She could tell he liked that part. Do you still have your pass? She did. She opened her right hand to reveal the mushed paper she had been gripping. He took it from her and tried to smooth it with his fingers. Then he checked his watch, took out a pen, and against the palm of his hand, changed the time, initialed it, and handed it back. Please don't speak of this event to anyone else, not until we know what happened. Now get to class. Yes, sir. And thank you, sir, for sorting this mess out. When he was a step away, she added, Ronsky started it. It was Ronsky's fault. The principal was heading for Miss Quincy. Cynthia heard her name being called. It was Mrs. Whitaker, Evan's mother. She had parked her gray BMW next to the police car. Is Evan here? Cynthia nodded, walking toward her. She pointed out where he was, saying she feared he was hurt, and repeated what Andrew said Ronsky had done to Evan in the hall. God in heaven, Mrs. Whitaker said. She touched Cynthia's arm briefly, thanked her, and strode quickly to Evan. Cynthia was so relieved Mrs. Whitaker was here. She had been a crack nurse, and she would know what to do. She better go now. She should make an appearance at her economics class. C8, instructor M. Cahill, it said on her schedule. That could be a man or a woman. Well, economics, so it must be a guy, right? She was only taking this class because her father asked her to. He said he longed to talk to her about something other than where she wanted him to drive her and when and where she wanted him to pick her up. There was a festive holiday atmosphere in some of the classrooms in C Wing on the right, where students were still standing at the windows watching events outside. C8 was on the left side, but there was no one inside. There was a note scotch taped to the window, Economics in C10. She opened the door to C10 and closed it softly behind her. There were about 15 kids in the class. She was surprised to see Mr. Bojangle. When she brought her pass up to him, he murmured, Is everything all right? She said she thought so, but her schedule said her economics teacher was somebody named M. Cahill. Your economics teacher's me now because Mr. Cahill accepted another job. Oh, Cynthia said. Well, congratulations. Thank you. Glad to be here. I always wanted to see how the other half lives. What was that supposed to mean? The other half of what? She took a seat next to a junior she knew, Charlie Hennessy. Charlie was super smart and a big sailor with his dad and sister. You could always tell the good sailors in Brighton because the topsiders they wore were always blasted and bleached by sun and salt water, while everybody else's, only the heels wore out. Looking around, she realized she didn't really know anyone else in this class. That was unusual. She wondered why. 5 minutes later, the bell rang, and Mr. Bojangles called her to the front to pick up a textbook in tonight's homework assignment. The book weighed a ton. Her next class, geometry, was also in C Wing, and when she walked in, she did a double take when she saw Coach Griffin, the man in the busy sports jacket. She checked her schedule. Yep, P. Griffin. She went up to Coach Griffin to ask if Evan was okay. He looked at her a minute and then nodded, told her not to worry. Evan would be fine. He left school with his mother. Relieved, she took a seat toward the back next to Robbie McLaren, who had been a big help in algebra last year. Robbie was great at math, but hated reading. When they were kids, Robbie's parents used to pay him $1 for every book he read, so Cynthia would help him memorize plot lines for a kickback. Robbie's father was president of Pentaco Oil, and his parents used to throw gigantic birthday parties for him until around 5th grade when he grew very quiet and stopped interacting much with other kids. Cynthia considered it a compliment Robbie still always responded to her because she had seen him simply stare at people until they went away. Coach Griffin started handing out textbooks extolling the beautiful symmetry of a great soccer team and how they all needed to come to games this fall to experience it. Half the class laughed while the other half appeared unconscious with their eyes open, which, in Cynthia's experience, was situation normal in math class. He then switched over to geometry's role in the construction of the Great Pyramids of Egypt. And suddenly the door opened, and Katie from California and Annabelle Fitzgerald walked in. They were both carrying paperwork, transferring them into the class. Annabelle grinned at Cynthia, and Katie gave a discreet little wave. When the paperwork was done, Mr. Griffin had them sit down in the front row. Cynthia noticed Robbie looking at Katie and also noticed that he didn't take his eyes off her for the rest of the class. What was it about this girl the guys liked so much? She wasn't pretty, not in a classic sense. Well, compared to Cynthia, she was beautiful. But what was it about her? What was that ineffable spark? Certainly that laugh was part of it. When the bell rang, Robbie headed straight for Katie, and in the next minute was shaking hands with her. Annabelle looked at Cynthia in amazement and walked over to whisper, "What's going on? Robbie hasn't spoken since 4th grade, and now he's hitting on the cool girl from California, like he's David Cassidy or something." Cynthia looked at her. "You think she's cool?" Annabelle nodded. "Way cool. And what do you think of that dress?" They both looked at the psychedelic-colored sundress. "Well, it's a little last year, but with that body, she can wear anything." Cynthia frowned. "What's so great about her body? She looks pretty normal to me." "By normal, you mean well-proportioned, balanced, symmetrical," she smiled, "like the best soccer teams, which is what the standard for beauty is in this country. Balanced, symmetrical. And that," she kicked her head in Katie's direction, "is the body designers design for." "Oh, gosh, I'm glad I asked. Now I know everything," Cynthia said. Annabelle leaned close. "Do you suppose he's asking her out?" "So what if he is? Look at him. This chick's got him talking like Chatty Cathy." Robbie did appear to be more animated than Cynthia had seen for quite some time, if ever. Cynthia had never considered Robbie as boyfriend material and wondered what Katie thought of him. He wasn't bad-looking, but he was no Teddy Hamilton. On the other hand, he was really rich and no doubt would get some really cool car when he turned 16, something like a Camaro. Robbie left and Katie walked over, pointing a finger back and forth between Cynthia and Annabelle. "Are you guys friends?" "Yes, sirree," Annabelle answered, nudging Cynthia with her hip. "Since forever, which is good for you because if you're a friend of Cynthia's, then you're a friend of mine, no questions asked." Katie smiled broadly. "Well, that was easy." "A word of warning, though," Annabelle added. "Everybody who knows Cynthia thinks they're Cynthia's best friend, so there could be a lot of pushing and shoving around in a crowd." "Popular, eh?" Katie said, taking a step back as if to assess Cynthia anew. Cynthia felt slightly embarrassed. "Too many student elections, I think." "Oh, that's the other thing, Katie. Cynthia's going to make you do stuff, like wash cars to feed West Africa or pick up garbage for goldfish." "Ladies," Mr. Griffin called, "could you please move along? The next class needs to come in." "I think it's good to have causes," Katie said as they moved toward the door. "I think so," Cynthia said, mouthing at Annabelle. "Garbage for goldfish?" Annabelle laughed, pulling out her schedule. Her smile vanished. "I have gym. God, it's like 10 miles from here." "You have gym?" Katie said, excited. "So do I." "Well then," Annabelle said, holding out a hand, "shall we attempt to find a shortcut?" "I think we shall," Katie said with a laugh. Cynthia waved by and watched them head outside through the double doors. That was nice. Now Katie had 3 friends. Cynthia reluctantly approached the mob scene that was the intersection of A, B, and C wing. What Einstein designed this school anyway? One intersection where 2/3 of the student body had to pass through in 4 different directions simultaneously. It was nuts. Her Spanish class was directly across in B wing. She had to go over there. She slowly moved forward, hesitating because she couldn't see any discernible path across the mob. She had to get to her class. When she saw a snake of students that seemed to be making progress in that direction, she fell in step with it, moving along. But right in the middle of the intersection, everything came to a halt. The crowd pressed in against her on all sides, to the point she couldn't move even if she wanted to. They were packed, wall-to-wall bodies. Without anyone's feet moving, the crowd slowly started to sway to the right, and then slowly started to swing back to the left. Cynthia burst out laughing because it was like being in a funhouse. It was the weirdest thing. Then someone's arms slid around her waist, and she felt a guy press his groin against her. "Hey!" she yelled, trying to twist away, but he had a good grip on her. "Oh, yeah, baby, move," the guy cried, laughing. When she looked around for help, she realized 3 other boys had helped the perv box her in. When she felt his hand shoot down between her legs, she shouted, "Cut it out!" and tried to wrest an arm free. "Stop it!" She struggled and then finally let books fall under her right arm to the floor. She slammed her elbow behind her. "Oof," the perv said, letting her go. She moved sideways through the crowd, glaring back at the perv, who was laughing at her with his friends as they continued moving toward B-Wing. How dare they? She sure as heck wasn't following them into B-Wing. She couldn't stand out here in the intersection getting bounced around by everybody. The crowd was starting to thin out, and eventually she saw and could hear her books being kicked around on the floor. She waited until the coast was relatively clear, and looking around before bending to pick them up, she held them against her chest and noticed 2 girls standing together near the wall, watching her. One met her eyes and started to smile, but Cynthia stopped herself from smiling back because she thought the girl might have seen what those boys had done to her and was mocking her. She made her way back to C-Wing. When she saw no one was in her homeroom, C-10, she let herself in and sat down on the far left so no one could see her through the door window. Then she put her head down on the desk. The bell rang. So what? She felt like crying, but she refused to. She was angry. Every time she thought of that smug smile on that pervert's face, then she had an idea, something that might make her feel better. She stood up, left the classroom quickly, and walked to the school library. The library was nice. It was spacious and bright, with high ceilings and tall windows. She headed to the circulation desk and asked the librarian if she had class yearbooks, for Brighton High. The librarian said they did and led her to a shelf in the reference section. The ridiculous name of the yearbook was Nothgerb, which was Brighton spelled backwards. Genius, right? She thumbed through last year's volume, 1970, scanning pictures. She found a double-page spread of last year's junior class, a group photograph taken from high up. On first glance, it seemed like it was a gazillion kids, but after she took her time, using her finger as a pointer, the faces were coming into focus as she scanned them one by one. She found him. There he was. There was the perv. She looked down at the legend running along the bottom and counted and then carefully recounted until she was sure she had the right name for the right face. The perv's name was L. Klumacher. She wrote it down on her little reporter's pad, and she felt better. Anyway, she was glad to know his name. Maybe she'd come back later to figure out who the other 3 students were, but she doubted it. It was L. Klumacher she was interested in. Lester the molester, she would now think of him. She put the book back, thanked the librarian, and headed for the smoking area. She went outside and walked a little way before lighting a cigarette. She needed it. "Cynthia," an unmistakable voice called. It was Clark. who was walking quickly toward her, and then he froze in his tracks, his eyes locked onto the cigarette in her hand. "Hi, Clark," she said, bringing it up to her lips to take a puff. "You shouldn't smoke." "Better get used to it," she told him. "But you're not allowed. You're not 16. "What do you want, Clark?" "Well, I wanted to tell you about something amazing that happened this morning in the nurse's office." His voice trailed off as he stared at her, taking another puff. Irritated, she abruptly exhaled the smoke. "Are you going to tell me about this amazing thing that happened or not?" He appeared to be undecided. She couldn't take that top button being buttoned anymore. She put her books down on the ground, asked him to hold her cigarette, which he did, reluctantly, making a face and holding it away from him like it was a poisonous insect. "When you're not wearing a tie, Clark," she told him, reaching up to unbutton his top button. Clark's back stiffened, but he allowed her to do it. She parted his collar slightly, took her cigarette back. "Much better, Clark. It looks good." His hand went up to feel his bare neck. "But my father keeps his buttoned." "Clark, how old is your father?" 66. Whoa. She had known Professor Allerton was old, but not that old. "Your father is a 66-year-old professor, Clark, and you're a 15-year-old teenager in high school. You shouldn't be dressing alike." "But what do I tell him? About the button, I mean." He looked worried, and Cynthia felt like screaming, "Why is everybody's life so complicated?" "You don't tell him anything, Clark. When we pick you up in the morning, you unbutton the top button of your shirt, and when you go home, you'll button it again when you reach your driveway." She took a step back. "It does look good, Clark. Really. I'm not kidding." "Am I supposed to thank you?" "Someday you will. I'm telling you, it looks good. Now, what's your amazing news?" "Oh, right." A toothy smile appeared on his face. "This morning, when I was in the nurse's office with Mimi." "Say, I wonder how Mimi's doing." "She's doing better, Clark, but we won't see her until Monday." She told him that he'd been right. She had broken her nose, and about going with her mother to take Mimi to the hospital. "Wait, why didn't Mrs. Watson take her?" "She wasn't home." "Where was she?" "No one knows." "Mrs. Valadares must know." "Mrs. Valadares wasn't there today." Behind Clark, a kid was making faces. "Cooties," he warned Cynthia. Clark started to turn around, but Cynthia pulled him by the arm to walk farther out. She was sick of bullies and mean kids. "So, Clark, for the last time, what was the amazing thing that happened?" "Oh, yes, it was amazing, Cynthia. I went with Mimi to the nurse's office, and we were talking to the nurse about what happened, and suddenly a man poked his head in and said, 'I don't know who you are.' He was looking right at me. 'But I want your voice in Theater 323. It was Mr. Wolfgang Zollner," he announced, "coach of the drama club." Cynthia smiled. "I met him this morning. He's the announcements man. He seemed very nice." "He is, and he asked me to come to the club's first meeting, which is today." She hadn't seen Clark this excited since third grade, when he successfully wired batteries under his bicycle seat to keep it warm. She was genuinely happy for him. The voice that had emerged after its changing last year was really quite something and belonged somewhere special. On a stage, or maybe in a lighthouse on foggy nights. She took another drag of her cigarette, which once again Clark stared at as he said, "So I'm afraid I won't be able to walk home with you today. I thought it was agreed everybody was on their own after school. I hope you'll explain the situation to your mother. Do you think I should telephone her?" "No, Clark, that's okay. Just remember when you do walk home, do the top button again if you think it's going to upset your father." "I honestly don't know if it will," he said seriously. "Why don't you ask your mother?" "Mother's not well, and Father says she's not likely to get better." Cynthia felt a chill. Was Mrs. Allerton dying? She'd have to ask her mother. I'm so sorry, Clark. He didn't respond. He just stood there blinking, and then he gave her a little wave, turned around, and walked away. She felt bad. She stamped out her cigarette, made sure it was out, threw it in the barrel. She was thinking maybe she should go to Spanish. Right now, she could say she lost her pass or something. She'd had so many of them today. Cynthia, someone called. It was Annabelle and Katie coming down the walk from the gym with a bunch of other girls. We were let out early, Annabelle said, because no one had gym suits or sneakers. Or another lock, Katie said. This is getting expensive. Do you have a lot of crooks in Connecticut or what? Aren't you supposed to be in Spanish? Annabelle asked her. Now you're sounding like Dr. Mullen. But aren't you? Yeah, but I didn't feel like going. She wasn't going to tell them about getting groped in the intersection. It was too embarrassing, too awful. Better to play indifference. She was still wondering why Lester the molester and his friends picked her. But what did it matter? She was never going to go through that intersection between classes again, ever. So, Katie said, looking around, this is the smoking area. I wish I had a cigarette, Annabelle said. Me too, Katie said. Cynthia knew Annabelle smoked, but Katie surprised her. It just so happens I have some cigarettes, ladies, courtesy of my mother. Your mother gives you cigarettes? Katie asked, wide-eyed. Cynthia shot her a look she understood. Oh, she must have a lot of cigarettes, though, if you can take a whole pack. My mother doesn't even smoke. Cynthia brought out the pack of Parliaments and wished her mother would start smoking the ones in the box because the soft pack was getting worked pretty hard in her purse. She gave them each a cigarette and lit a match, holding it out first to Annabelle and then to Katie. Katie did know how to smoke. She inhaled, smiled, and streamed the smoke through her nose. Aren't you having one? Cynthia was torn. She'd love to hang out with them, but she also knew she should get that Spanish book. If she'd learned anything in her academic career, it was that a textbook gave her a fighting chance of understanding everything she might not be paying attention to in class. Spanish won out, and she said goodbye to Annabelle and Katie and hurried toward B-Wing. There were only about 15 minutes left in the whole day. She slipped into the classroom, looked down at her hands, around on the floor, and then in her purse. I have a pass somewhere, she whispered. En español, señorita, por favor. She held her hands up. No pase. Siéntate, the teacher said, pointing to a desk. Yo aprendo stay eso más tarde. Well, Cynthia didn't know what that meant. Something about later. Clay Seaton, of all people, was sitting at the desk next to her, and he smiled broadly. She was scarcely able to smile, though, wondering what he would think of her letting Lester the molester rub up against her in this intersection. Of the 100 girls in this school, why did those guys pick her? Maybe her increasing bra size was not such a good thing after all. She should tell someone about El Cluemaker, but she was pretty sure she'd die of humiliation before she could say it. The teacher, Senora Cordoba, was quite a show. She was wearing a colorful, loose-flowing dress and occasionally spun on her very high heels, making the dress lift in the air. Her hair was very dark, and her beautiful skin was olive-colored, and Cynthia assumed she was some kind of foreign Spanish person because she certainly didn't seem like anyone else in Brighton, she knew. The teacher refused to let the students speak any English, so the conversation in the classroom was lopsided to say the least. No, 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 en español, she cried when Clay asked if there was any homework. La mejor manera de aprender de otras es aprenderlo. She walked to his desk. ¿Lo entiendes? Clay shrugged and timidly asked, ¿Sí? The teacher smiled, showing excellent teeth. Hable, señor. Clay took a breath. Any homeworko? He said, laughing and turning red. It was pretty funny. The bell rang, signaling the end of school, and each student passed by the teacher's desk to sign out a textbook. Cynthia dawdled in the back. She wanted the intersection to clear out before she faced it again. She was the very last student to get a book. Senorita, the teacher said, handing her a book. Gracias, Senor Cordoba. How do you say, are you a dancer? The teacher's face lit up. Eres ballerina. Like ballerina? Más o menos, she said, tilting her head. More or less, Cynthia understood. Ah, gracias. She raised her eyebrows. So, eres ballerina? Mrs. Cordoba flashed a smile, placed her finger on her head, did a twirl, ending with one high heel forward, as much as to say, ta-da! No, she laughed. She walked over to her desk, picked up her lesson book, opened it to the attendance sheet, and held it out to Cynthia. ¿Quién eres? Cynthia pointed to her name. Ah, Senorita Schuyler. Buena. She put her lesson book away and started stacking the leftover books. Okay, well, I guess I better be going, Cynthia said, edging toward the door. I mean, gracias, senora, and adios. Cynthia, Senora Cordoba said with zero accent. Cynthia looked at her. She smiled. It's a beautiful day, and I'm not going to hound you for a pass. Cynthia gave her a tremendous smile, said gracias, and left. She pulled out her schedule. It was already creased and torn after a day in her purse. Tonight she would paste it on the inside of her new notebook before it disintegrated completely. In the world of the modular schedule, she saw, her last class today, Espanol, would be her first class tomorrow morning, unless they changed the system again. Okay, so she needed to bring that book home. Her second class was chemistry, which she had missed today. Should she try to find that teacher now and find out what she missed? No way, she was too tired. After chemistry tomorrow, she had a study hall. Now, that was great because she figured she could do her economics and geometry homework then, so she didn't have to lug those books home now. This walking thing was for the birds. She continued into C Wing. She missed receiving her locker this morning as well, but she did have a combination lock, so she started checking lockers near her homeroom to find an empty one. Bingo, got one. She stuck her economics and geometry books in it, shut the door, searched her purse for her lock and the combination, opened the lock, slung the shackle through the hasp, and closed it. Click. There, done. This horrible school day was finally over. She walked home, keeping her eyes to the ground so she didn't have to see kids riding by her in cars. As she passed the Allertons' driveway, she hoped Clark would remember to button his top button. He seemed like he was a little scared of his father. 66 was old for a dad. His mother was older too. Cynthia hadn't spoken to her for years. She was just sort of a shadow behind the curtains. As she passed the Watsons' driveway, she considered stopping in, but figured her mother would know if that was a good idea or not. She crossed into Glen River Road South, and when she opened the mailbox and saw the mail was still in there, wondered if her mother was even home. She took the mail out. There was a ton of it, and she struggled to keep it all together. But the new Life magazine slid to the ground, and the cover was very scary. The tragic record of heart transplants. Oh, she wouldn't be looking at that issue voluntarily. Cynthia followed their driveway around the corner, and poof, there was their house. The stone cape was deceptively small in the front, giving no hint to it being 3 floors in the back, mostly glass, overlooking their back lawn and Glen River. This time of year, the river didn't run very high, but the ducks, geese, herons, and egrets didn't seem to mind. Several years ago, her parents had purchased an adjoining 3 acres of woods, with the idea of building a smaller house there one day to retire in. But pending legislation in Hartford was driving her father to distraction, because whatever it was called, the wetlands something, could classify those 3 acres as critical river buffer, which would mean her parents couldn't build on it and essentially render that land worthless. The Schuylers had paid a lot of money for it. She ran around to the back of the house, crossed the flagstone terrace, and opened the kitchen door that was always unlocked. "Hi, I'm home." Immediately, their overweight little dachshund, Ashette, started barking her head off. After she made the corner turn into the kitchen, he skidded across the linoleum. Cynthia put everything down on the counter and knelt down. "Hello, my little poppet," she said, trying to pet her, but Ashette was determined to lick her face. She hadn't seen Cynthia on her way out this morning because she had been snoozing in the sun somewhere. "Stop it, sweet girl. Stop licking me. Yuck." She gave her a little kiss on the nose and stood up. "Mom? I'll be down in a minute," came from upstairs. Cynthia picked up the phone and dialed Evan's house. The Schuylers had the longest telephone cord known to man, so she could walk to the refrigerator and look inside. Slim pickings. While the phone rang at the Whitakers, she took the jar of grape jelly out, found the peanut butter, and made herself a sandwich. She finally hung up the phone, wondering where the heck Evan was. She hoped not the hospital or the police station. She took a big bite of her sandwich and washed it down with milk straight from the milk carton, but she heard her mother on the stairs, so she quickly grabbed a glass, poured milk in it, stuck the carton back in the refrigerator, threw her sandwich on a plate, and sat down at the table. "Hi, dear," her mother said, breezing in. She kissed Cynthia on the forehead, handed her a napkin, and retrieved a knife to cut her sandwich in half. She had showered and changed. She was wearing a floral skirt of white and coral, a sleeveless white blouse, coral lipstick, and off-white post-Labor Day sandals. "Mimi's staying with us for a few days," she announced. "She's in the guest room taking a nap right now. Mrs. Valaderos will be stopping by soon to drop off a suitcase." She lit a cigarette. Her mother was nervous. Cynthia waited for an explanation, but none came. "Why? Why's Mimi staying here?" Her mother exhaled a cloud of smoke. "She needs her rest, and there's a lot going on over at the Watsons." "Like what?" "Construction." She put her cigarette down in the ashtray, reached under the counter to bring out the electric skillet. "I thought we could have pork chops with mushroom soup tonight, with mashed potatoes and green beans. What do you think?" "Sounds good." Her mother brought out a box of Betty Crocker's potato buds and 2 cans of Campbell's mushroom soup out of the pantry and put them on the counter. Cynthia watched her mother take the pork chops out of the meat drawer. They were the little ones she really liked. "Why is Mimi really staying here?" she asked. "I told you, the Watsons have construction going on, and there won't be any noise or dust or paint smell here. It's important that Mimi get her rest after everything she's been through." Something was going on. "Mimi hasn't spent the night here in 10 years, Mom." Ashette was dancing around her mother's feet. She looked down. "You know it's not dinner time yet. Buzz off." Ashette redoubled her efforts to impress. "Evan got into a fight this afternoon." "Oh, no," her mother said, turning to look at her. "Not with that fellow who was calling him names this morning." "Yep, that's the one. The kid's name is Ronsky." Her mother laughed. "I'm sorry. The circumstances are not funny, but if that isn't the most appropriate name for a villain, I don't know what is." Ronsky. Cynthia hadn't thought of that. It was funny. Ronsky jumped Evan in the hall, smashed his forehead into a locker, and jammed an elbow into his kidney. "Good God," her mother said, jaw-dropping. Then there was a fight outside, and Evan, the captain of the soccer team, and 2 other players, against Ronsky and 2 other football players. Ronsky tried to tell the police that Evan attacked him. Her mother came over to the table, pulled out a chair, and sat down. "Evan was really hurt, Mom. He had a big red golf ball on his forehead, and he was holding his lower back the whole time I saw him. Mrs. Whitaker arrived just as Dr. Mullen told me I had to leave, so I don't know what happened. I've called the Whitakers, but there's no answer." Certainly the Whitakers will know exactly what to do medically, but I wonder if... Well, we should call later and see if there's something we can do. Maybe I could make a casserole or something for them. Cynthia took the last bite of her sandwich. "Mom," she said in a low voice, "I still don't understand why Mimi's here. You need to tell me what's really going on." Her mother started to speak and then stopped. It's not just the construction at her house, is it, Mom? No. She had forgotten about her cigarette, which was still burning in the ashtray on the counter. Her mother was resting her chin on her hand and was gazing out at the river. Mrs. Watson's behavior, her recent behavior makes me doubt her abilities as a parent. Mr. Watson's on a business trip in L.A. She turned to look at Cynthia. Until he gets back, I'm keeping Mimi with us. Whoa. Yikes. Well, everybody, we're going to have another episode next Friday, so you must come back and see what happens. I hope you have a fabulous week. Thank you so much for giving me this joyful experience, because it really is. You just have no idea. That's it. I'll see you next week. Be well, and God bless. Good night.